Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Okay, let's talk about Uranus, North Node, Mars, lining up in Taurus. Pretty big configuration, pretty significant. So I've been reflecting on this for a few days now, and I feel the messages have come through in terms of what I feel I need to share. The thing to understand about this is that in any case, with whether you're looking at one aspect or one particular, astrological phenomena, it is always about looking at it or exploring it and understanding it from the collective perspective, and also, of course, from a personal perspective. Now, relative to the collective perspective, I will point to a few things for sure, but it's really worth sort of looking at the timeline, which I'm not going to do today because that would just take too long, but looking at the timeline historically in terms of what has come up in this 3D reality every time Uranus and North Node come together. And so they come together every 15 years. So that means that Uranus skips a sign and catches up to the next sign with the North Node, right? Because Uranus spends approximately 7 years in each sign of the zodiac, okay? So the last conjunction we had was in Pisces in 2007, actually. North Node Uranus conjunction in Pisces. So there's a lot of, I had a quick look to see what was going on in the world then, and relative to the mainstream media and what's online, it's pretty dark. That there wasn't a lot of great things relative to what's put out there on the media, but if we looked more deeply into the spiritual, the esoteric, the occult, which is what I'm much more interested in, of course, I think we would see a lot of developments from the astrological lens and communities, and the world of spirituality, and the processes and journeys that were born out of that particular conjunction, okay, around about 15 years ago. Having said that, I'm not going to backtrack at the moment because I just would like to focus in the present and just have an overview kind of look at what the possibilities are of Uranus in Taurus conjunct the North Node in Taurus, and also Mars lining up with that conjunction. But two things. First thing, with Uranus, it corresponds to many different things, but it corresponds to our higher intelligence, it corresponds to right brain long-term memory, it corresponds to everything outside of the consensus reality, the status quo. It corresponds to the unexpected, to rebels, to individuation, to different and unusual approaches, methodologies, technology. There's so many levels to it, right? But in amongst the umbrella of all the various components that Uranus speaks to, the one thing that we, I suppose, always need to remember is that it does speak to the unknown and to things that suddenly appear. The word sudden is a very good word for Uranus, the unexpected and the unpredictable. So how can you predict what's going to happen when we're talking about a body that is completely unpredictable? And so if we keep that in our mind as we are journeying towards this energy and wanting to integrate it, personally in our lives, and also just to have a better understanding of what it might speak to collectively, I think we really do need to just hold that space of the fact that it's unpredictable and it's uncertain, and so therefore anything can happen, right? So there is that. The other thing that I personally find very fascinating particularly because I'm very fond of the asteroids and work quite a lot with them in astrology. When I look at charts, when I'm speaking about a lunation cycle or whatever I'm speaking about, if I see a particular asteroid that is quite prominent, then I will pay attention to that. And you would have noticed that in my last couple of videos if you've watched them. I've spoken quite a bit about the Black Moon Lilith. There is an asteroid Lilith as well. I've spoken about Ceres, Persephone, Isis. There was a number of asteroid goddesses all lining up in Cancer. There was one in Capricorn, I think. So I always pay attention. And one particular asteroid, which I absolutely adore and is definitely not mainstream, and is extremely prominent in my own chart. And I always, if I get my hands on an astrologer's chart, if I'm interested in looking at their chart, I'll always look for this asteroid and see where it is, because it is an extremely profound asteroid for those that love astrology, teach astrology, study astrology, are just engaged with the mother of all science, astrology, the wisdom teachings of astrology. And her name is Urania. So it sounds a little bit like Uranus, but it's not. It's Urania, spelled Urania. And she's a very prominent goddess when we are wanting to explore the realm of astrology and astronomy. Actually, she was the goddess, the muse. There were 9 muses and she was one of them. And the word music comes out of muse, of course. So the muses were these beautiful, divine, feminine goddesses who essentially inspired humanity. That was their role, and they each inspired through various skills and talents that they each had. And Urania was one of those muses, and she was the essential muse of astrology and astronomy. And it's interesting actually, because there's a bit of a backstory to this, but if you just go back in history, before the Renaissance times, astrology and astronomy were one and the same. They were not separate, okay? And so that's how it should be, actually. But anyway, over time, through historical events and the evolution in this 3D reality, things have segregated, separated, and so forth. And one of those things, of course, was astrology and astronomy. So a couple more things about Urania. She is actually lining up with this Uranus North Node conjunction. So it's not only Mars that's there, and Mars is going to be there really for a day. The orb of that energy might be active for a few days, but Mars moves very quickly. Urania moves slower, so she's been building up to that position. And there was just one other point there that it's just escaped my mind, but perhaps it'll come back as I continue. So, okay, so that's what I was going to say. I think Urania being present with this conjunction with Mars, specifically actually Uranus North Node, is speaking to the future of astrology, the future of these teachings and these wisdoms that is, skyrocketing from the point of view of the interest generated into these studies because of the technological advancement and the amount of exposure that we have, to different teachers, different platforms, podcasts, so on and so forth. So there's so much material accessible. I mean, I can tell you now, when I first started astrology, in terms of studying it and just eating it for breakfast, lunch and dinner, which I still do, it was such a long time ago. There was the world that we see today with what we have access to just was non-existent when I first started. And I'm actually very grateful for that, to be honest, because it really gave me an opportunity to dive very deeply into reading. I've read a lot of books through the years, and nowadays it feels to me that because there's so much accessible online, and so many people teaching or speaking or sharing about astrology. A lot of people, it makes us a little bit lazy to an extent, unless you are a real, bookworm and you love your books. That would be an exception, of course. But it can make us a little bit lazy because we can just jump online, jump on YouTube, jump on someone's Facebook, jump on someone's podcast, whatever it may be, and we'll watch and we'll listen. And yeah, you definitely do learn like that, of course. But I think when you're reading a book, um, for instance, when I first started astrology, I was calculating charts by hand. No computer, no program. Now it takes you literally like 3 seconds to cast a birth chart. When I first started, I learned how to do it by hand, and I have to admit that was not easy. I found it very challenging, and I just had to really apply myself and really focus. And I got there. I learned how to do it. I started off with Australian birth charts, and then I went further and started working with people's charts who were born in the US, etc., because there's different tables and different latitude, longitude, different things going on depending on where you were born. So anyway, my point is that even though technology has advanced us in so many wonderful ways, you could say it's a curse and a blessing at the same time. Not only in the example that I've just given, but in life in general. Just the sheer depersonalization, right? That's quickly just becoming more and more and more obvious. Just everything being online, it depersonalizes humanity essentially. I mean, soon you won't need anything from a shop at all. In fact, that's probably the case now. You can order food online, you can order medicine online, you can get anything online, right? And that seems very convenient, and very easy, and it is. And in some cases, it would be extremely convenient, where it would be suitable and more useful to to buy something in that way. But it's just creating this significant depersonalization, I feel, anyway. So that's what I was going to say as well. With the recent NASA photographs that have been released, what was it, the James something photography out in space that has revealed very clear photographs of galaxies and the universe and so forth. And there's going to be people that jump on and say, oh, NASA are full of shit, they're lies, blah, blah, blah. They may be that. They may or they may not. I can't prove that they are, but irrespective of that, I really don't give a shit. What I do give a shit about is that there is, this infinite universe, and everything is energy. And at the end of the day, I've seen lots of photographers who are would be considered amateurs, but they're amazing. They're brilliant. They've got pretty advanced equipment, and I've seen them take photographs, of Saturn, the Moon, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, etc. And it's just we've advanced so much technologically now that we can actually grasp. We can send that lens all the way, down into infinity, if you like, and capture something, right? So we can't deny that. So regardless of whether you think NASA is this or that or the other, doesn't really matter. The point that why I'm even bringing this up is because, and this is quite funny actually, I feel anyway. I saw an article that said, and it was in the astronomical community, and it was post those recent pictures that were revealed. And it said something, I can't remember the exact words, but I'll just try and paraphrase it to my best ability. It said something like, do we now need to start asking the question around energy, divinity, the connection, universe, that we are not alone. There is something, sort of unexplainable, as it were, so that they were pointing to the deeper questions that we should really all be asking from the time we're born, but you have to be pretty Uranian to do that, or grow up with Uranian type of parents. But anyway, I just found that really amusing, because to me it was like a duh, I mean, like, yeah. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting article, because that was a very consensus mainstream article, pointing to, we really don't know as much as we think we know. There's so much more out there, kind of thing, right? Not that thought or question has never been asked before. Of course it has, but it was just very interesting that it lined up in this, in the timing of these pictures being revealed and so forth. And so that again reminded me of Uranus North Node conjunction and Urania, goddess Urania, being aligned with that conjunction, really speaking to the future of consciousness, right? Intelligence, consciousness, wisdom, astrology, Uranus. Now, if we unpack that for a moment, sometimes there is debate around which planet rules astrology, and in the old traditional texts it was Mercury that ruled astrology. So I would still say that Mercury absolutely still rules astrology, and so does Uranus. Okay, but then you could say, well, Neptune describes astrology as well, because it does, and so does Pluto, and so does Saturn. So there's an argument for all of them, really. In any case, Urania is there's no doubt about what that particular muse corresponds to. She was the muse of astronomy and astrology. So she's in Taurus, lining up with Uranus and North Node. And again, we need to always remember that there is the element of the unknown, the unexpected, the unpredictable, the suddenness of what Uranus can actually bring in. But in any case, if we just focus on the symbolism, Urania, North Node, Uranus, it's all speaking to the future, right? And particularly the future of astrology. And I suppose if we bring in the element of Taurus, it most obviously speaks to money, the world of money. And perhaps it's pointing to the greater sense of establishment for people's life paths who all they do is astrology, and that's how they try to survive through, what they teach, what they speak about, maybe writing books, writing articles, whatever it may be, and so I think there's something there about the financial growth perhaps that can come out of what this North Node Uranus Urania symbolizes, because this energy of Uranus North Node and Urania being there as well, it really speaks to the next 15 years. So it's not just about looking at the alignment on the day. I mean, it is about that from the point of view of, if you want to look at the chart for that moment, of course, and that chart will give you a lot of clues and insight into the overall themes of that North Node Uranus. And I'll bring up the chart in a moment. But effectively, we need to realize that this cycle is a 15-year cycle. So there's going to be a journey of various things, unfolding over many years to come. And it is pretty obvious that Uranus in Taurus has been the most obvious destabilizer relative to the financial world and the world of security, down to the level of even food, farmers, crops, apparent shortages, etc. Right now, whether it's deliberately engineered, whether it's false, whether it's exaggerated. It's probably all of those things, but it is also true in that it is happening, right? And so I always knew when I was watching Uranus, because I was really working very strongly with Uranus energy as it was completing the journey through Aries, because it went over my Mercury and my Sun and just a number of other things that I have in Aries. So Uranus in Aries aspecting those planets for me was a massive turning point in my life in a lot of ways, including the transcendence of my father. So it was a big time for me, and I was just very immersed in the vibration of Uranus, and it wasn't an easy journey, but it was mind-blowing with the amount of study and reading and absorbing and learning that I did, especially when Uranus was on my Mercury. I must have done so much study and deep diving at that time relative to astrology than I'd ever done in my entire life. You know, it's so hard to even put into words, but it was literally just breathing it, 24/7. It was incredible what opened up for me internally and in my mind when Uranus was at those late degrees of Aries. And then when I saw it moving into Taurus, I always knew that it was going to, the most obvious symbolism is some sort of destabilization, with the economy, with the world of money, which is Taurus, with housing, mortgages, rentals, you name it, the whole thing. And we've had, an incredible tipsy-turvy, is that how you say it? Oh, just a lot of different waves of inconsistencies and unpredictabilities relative to the market in so many different ways just in the last few years that Uranus has been in Taurus. And so from that perspective, I think the North Node Uranus will somehow speak to our future moving forward over the next 15 years. And I'd rather not be pessimistic and go down a window of, well, it's been pretty difficult so far. So does that mean for the next 15 years we're staring down the barrel of, this incredible instability relative to the material and financial world and so forth? And yes, perhaps we are to some extent, but then we need to also realize that there are spiritual implications here. That this is the energy of intelligence working through the body. Taurus is the body. As much as it is money, survival, your everyday cash flow influx, your values, your morals, it's all those things, but it's also literally our physical body. So there is something to be said here about Uranus, North Node, Urania, and the integration of the intelligence of Uranus, the wisdom of Uranus, and the allowing of stepping into the unknown. Because when we don't allow ourselves to step into the unknown, we remain in a very controlled reality, if you like, which doesn't really open pathways or doors for us to explore unknown territory, which is the very place where you can experience the greatest growth. There's lots of things that can come through those portals. It can be shock, it can be well, I suppose the reason it's shock is because when we are not prepared for something, it feels like a shock, right? We're not ready for it. But we can't really be ready in that sense for Uranus, because that would mean that we are sort of trying to control the potential outcomes, and you can't control anything with Uranus. You literally can't. It's really just about being very open and receptive to the numerous possibilities and how that might speak to your own path of individuation, path of waking up, path of expanding your own consciousness and seeing more truth, right, in your pathway. You can project that out into the external reality, and you're only going to get essentially what's coming from within you anyway. But we we want to see all these changes out there, and we forget that the change always starts from within, hence Michael Jackson's song Man in the Mirror. That's exactly what it means, right? So Uranus North Node, I like this book here. I have shown it before, The Combination of Stellar Influences by Reinhold Overton. Now, German guy, this book was written back in the 40s or 50s. It wasn't that long ago. It was about he was born in the 40s or something like that. But this book was written in the 70s. So the point to that is that, European generation of 1940s, very black and white, right? Fantastic book though, but can be quite can feel quite negative, a lot of the things that he says, and quite dark at times. But I find that what he writes is terribly accurate. Now, fortunately for Mars-Uranus energy, he's got something really interesting to say. Mars-Uranus North Node, actually, for these three coming together. It's just one comment, one sentence, but it's very interesting. The demonstration of excitement in the presence of other people, the experience of sudden events shared together with other people, the execution of extraordinary and unusual enterprises. And I think that's a very good encapsulation of Mars-Uranus North Node, because it speaks to the unusual, the unexpected, and extraordinary, perhaps, enterprises as well. And so I think we're going to see some really mind-blowing, tripped out things take place over the next 15 years, and more so in this, reality, as it were, and more so because Pluto is ingressing into Aquarius as well, which is Uranus's sign, and that's literally around the corner, So if we think reality is weird now, wait till we get to Pluto in Aquarius. That's when we're going to see some very, very bizarre things on this planet. Speaking of bizarre, I just was alerted today that I'll just share my screen and bring up chart. So this is a chart for today, and Chiron just went retrograde yesterday, and I will come back and talk about that separately, but I just want to flag this because this is when I thought, and this expression might be offensive to some, I'm sorry if it is, but the first thought that came to my mind was, this reality is just, this 3D reality is just tripping balls, it really is just tripping balls, okay? Chiron in Aries, 16 degrees, it goes retrograde yesterday, and at the same time, we get a news alert that there's a new variant called Centaurus. Now, what does that mean? What the hell does that mean? I'm still actually pondering that myself, to be honest. But I think there is a link there that, Chiron goes retrograde, and now we've got this stupid variant called Centaurus. And I don't want to talk about the sea thing that's been going on the last 3 years, because it actually pisses me off, if I'm going to be honest, because I'll just say this. I just have to say this at least. I'll speak for Australia, right, which I know this story would reflect in many other places as well. When this narrative began nearly 3 years ago, there were, and everyone was put into lockdown, and Melbourne, Australia was really hit the hardest out of most places, actually. The lockdown periods were severe, extreme, and really long in time, etc. But anyway, the point is that when this thing came about, and the lockdowns came about, there were literally hardly any cases. Literally, during the whole lockdown period, there were hardly any people in hospital, hardly any cases. That's a fact. I mean, nurses and doctors have come out and validated that. So it's not coming from me, it's not my personal opinion, it's actual fact. And as time went on, the people that were sharing objective truth, actually, relative to what's going to occur through the coercion around the liquid insertion, and by the majority of people conforming and succumbing to that, what we would actually see is cases explode, and many people sick and many people dying as a result of the liquid. And that's indeed exactly what's happened. Sadly and unfortunately, that's what's actually happened. In Melbourne, you know, it's skyrocketing relative to cases and variants and just all this crap, you know, that was born out of that one little thing they started, and everybody running to the fear porn that was projected. So it actually does piss me off, right? Because at the moment in Australia, they're now, they've given the clear permission to put liquid into 6-month-old babies. Now, if that seems normal to you and necessary, I would have to ask you to really show evidence as to why you think that that is the right thing. 6-month-old baby and infant. So anyway, this is the rubbish that's going on in the 3D world, unfortunately. And I just wonder, with Chiron going retrograde as well, at the same time they release this information, and they've said that this Centaur Chiron variant is a threat to around about 15 countries at this point. It's very fascinating with the names they've come up with, isn't it? You know, there's it's not coincidental, right? There's a lot of this, there's a lot of things that we still are unaware of. In any case, regardless of where you sit with that, regardless of what's being presented, I suppose with our own personal self-work, personal self-development, personal evolution, then, you know, it would be more useful and more valuable for us to work with these archetypes from the point of view of our own journey in healing, especially with Chiron. But I will come back to talk about that. Let's go back to Uranus North Node. So the North Node, which is in this case is the Moon's North Node, because every planet has a North and South Node, by the way. So we're looking at the Moon's North Node, which is typically a cycle where the nodes move backwards in the zodiac, and they essentially speak to collective events, right? And the collective future, North Node. It's the present, but it's the future. And the South Node is the past, but it's also the present. Because in the world of spirit, there is no differentiation between past, present, future. Everything's happening all at the same time, but our left linear brain couldn't possibly fathom that concept. That's why clairvoyants and psychics, for instance, authentic ones, have the ability to penetrate through Maya, the 3D reality, and see something or someone in a particular situation, let's say, and bring that information back and give it to a person, right? What are they actually saying when they're looking? Are they in, you know, relative to time, right? Where are they? The time component of things is very significant and applies to the 3D reality. right? Because it's ruled by Saturn, and Saturn rules the fact that we have this biological clock, the fact that we age, the fact that we are born as babies, and if we live a long life, die as an elderly person, right? That's the world of Saturn. So that there has to be this linear sense of time in the physical dimension, but in the spiritual dimension, there is no such thing as time. So everything is happening all at once. It's a pretty out there concept, and very difficult for our left mind to understand. But that's my feeling about spirit and time and the past, present, and future, right? And so Eckhart Tolle has a really great expression. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like, we are always sort of consumed, if you like, or impacted by the past and worried about the future, and very rarely are we in the present, which would be in the middle of these two. And the nodes are a beautiful symbolism for that, to show us and also to point us to remembering that, even the nodes in our own chart, it's not about abandoning the south node and just going to the north node. We can't do that anyway. It's just not possible. But it is about the integration of the two and being somewhere in the center and having an awareness of both and being present in the now, right? So the north node on Uranus does speak to an unknown future, but it also speaks to the present, and it also speaks to the integration that we embark on with this energy, and how we bring in a sense of authentic alignment, right? Uranus, authentic alignment, being truthful to ourselves. The thing that I asked Spirit before I came on to do this video, I asked, just if you could just help me transmit information that is useful and that is truthful. That's my goal, with pretty much every reading that I do, right? And so truthful and useful, I really like those two words, actually. And useful, is a very earth type of thing, really, isn't it? In the earthly sort of material plane, and that would be Taurus as well. But truthful would be Uranus. The truth is out there. The truth is unknown to a large extent. And so, throughout our whole life and our whole journey, we are, in one way or another, consciously or otherwise, somehow trying to come closer and closer and closer to the truth of who we are. And a large part of that journey is remembering. And remembering means peeling off layers and deconditioning, right? Because Saturn is the planet that, whilst it has a lot of great things about it, because it does, and it's necessary as part of our conscious structure, or it wouldn't exist. We need Saturn. But if we do not move beyond the bounds of Saturn, then we largely live in a reality that is controlled and limited, which are two words that correspond to Saturn, of course. So if we want to move beyond Saturn, we've got to enter Chiron. And from Chiron, we actually then get to Uranus. And that's why Chiron has the name to him known as the Rainbow Bridge. He bridges that gap between Saturn and Uranus. So it's very interesting that Chiron has only just gone retrograde, and this Uranus North Node conjunction is just days away, more or less, right? So that's not a coincidence either. I think because when a planet goes retrograde, the invitation is to go within, right? The opportunity is to go within and further integrate and further understand the archetype and the energy and how it feels in your inner landscape, and what work you have done there. And what is the work with Chiron? The work is always around healing, right? But it's not only hearing, it's a few different things. I suppose I'm bringing in Chiron when I said I was going to do a separate video. So I may or may not do a separate video. Now, I don't know. I'll see. But you can't separate this phenomenon here that Chiron has gone retrograde. And as I said, Chiron is really the archetype that really does help us step into the world of Uranus. So Chiron going retrograde takes us more deeply into the inner foundations, inner layers, psychic structures, and so forth. And there was one point I was trying to make and I lost it. Perhaps it'll come back. Yeah, so Uranus North Node, stepping into the unknown, stepping into the unknown future, and stepping into it from a place where you've got to be okay with what's uncertain. And the truth is, everything is uncertain. That's the truth. Everything is uncertain. Tomorrow is not promised to anybody, So we are always living in the land of the uncertain, but there are many people that would argue that, no, I'm very certain about what's going on in my life because I'm in control of this, I'm certain of this, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I would say, yeah, good luck with that. Good luck. Because there isn't a very powerful element of the unknown in this existence. And I think part of our evolution and soul's journey is to integrate towards that with trust and faith, which of course is Jupiter, and also surrender, which of course is Neptune. So Urania being conjunct this Uranus North Node, I think is going to speak to new branches of astrological wisdom perhaps coming through. It could be old traditional things that come through in a different way with a different level of understanding, but there is something very powerful that Urania is bringing into this mix, and perhaps even just bringing a greater sense of consciousness and understanding to humanity on the earth plane, which is Taurus. Taurus is the sign that would describe Earth, Mother Nature, Gaia. So there is an invitation to access and activate these energies through our physical bodies as well. And I think that's an important message because with the world of technology, as I said earlier, this level of depersonalization and with all the electronics, everyone's just like this, aren't they? You're on the tram, you're on the bus, you're on the road, you're wherever you are, everyone's just like this. Especially the younger generations, but nowadays it's pretty much everyone. So this just it decenters us. It's a powerful tool, but it's a powerful tool for taking us further and further away from nature, which is Taurus, which is Mother Earth. So I think there is a reminder here with North Node and Urania and Uranus in Taurus pointing to integrating into the future with inventions, new genius ideas and creations and things like that will actually bring us closer to Mother Earth, to nature, right? Re-establish, if you like, our centeredness and our connection, because we have gone so far from our center, right? Because of the amount of distraction that the 3D reality presents. Everything is designed to distract us and to take us further from our center, because in the 3D reality, those distractions hold the money. You know, they control and dictate people's lives just through the sheer power of distracting people into this advertisement, that advertisement, doing this, doing that, etc., etc. It just takes us further and further away from our center. And I guess with that as well, the sun is about to ingress into Leo. Beautiful time of the year when the sun ingresses into Leo. It's a beautiful time in any sign that the sun journeys through, without question. But I love the Leo energy because it does remind us of that heart center. When we strip right back away from some of the qualities that Leo can present, which can be perceived as not so gracious at times, let's just say that. But in the more esoteric and spiritual sense, Leo is the lion heart. It's the deepest activation of our heart portal, our heart center. And so that fire energy of Leo, which acts as a source of inspiration as well, inspiration to open the heart. So much comes back to our heart, that's why a lot of people have heart attacks. And the thing that concerns me is this liquid thing that they've brought out the last couple of years. There's so much evidence that points to cardiac issues, even for teenagers. And I guess if we think about that, that also kind of relates to the motivation of the 3D forces to keep people unwell and to keep people away from their heart center. It's pretty mortifying. Rudolf Steiner, one of the greatest clairvoyants, actually, one of the greatest teachers in his time, he has articles where he has spoken about what is actually taking place right now. He saw it happening. So anyway, that points to the overall collective unconscious and just how unconscious the collective is. So I think the good thing with Uranus North Node from our own personal perspective is just to have some time to step into that energy relative to where it is in your birth chart especially, and think about it as a 15-year cycle, because that's what it's going to be. And if you're an astrologer or an astrology student, or someone who just loves learning astrology and so on and so forth, or if you're trying to build a business through astrology, this is a pretty good omen with Uranus North Node, Urania all in Taurus. I think that's a pretty strong message that there's so much more that's going to be built into these societies and these cultures relative to the wisdom teachings of astrology through Uranus and Urania, and people just being able to make a living and things like that. The Mars coming up to that Uranus North Node, this chart is the conjunction between Uranus North Node 15 years ago. So there it is, 2007. It was 16 degrees Pisces. Interesting, Mercury is there as well. And both Mercury and Uranus are the rulers to astrology. And here they are in the sign of Pisces. As I said, there was a lot of weird things going on back in 2007. It also corresponded to the global, economical crash that came in just after this, because Pluto ingressed into Capricorn, right? The subsequent year, but the crash, all sort of happened around this time. So there was a lot of things going on from that perspective. And here we are 15 years later, and there's an equivalent sort of economical crash at the moment due to this, what I feel has been a engineered bug into the earth plane, which is affecting humanity. It's affecting humanity in the physical body, Taurus. It's affecting humanity in terms of their money, Taurus. So many people have lost money, businesses, just being able to survive. And that's really the majority of people, because it is the majority of people that have less money. So who's going to get impacted by this crap? It's going to be people who are just struggling to make ends meet, just trying to survive, so to speak. But it's not all doom and gloom. The Uranus North Node in Taurus is pointing to something more promising for us, but there has to be some kind of destabilization as well. That there just has to be, because Uranus is the agent for creating cracks and shocks and destabilizing a lot of the structures, and in this case, foundations as well. Taurus is the foundation, really. It's the foundation upon which we build things on, so that there are just some things that we maybe don't even understand, that need to come to being cracked open, as it were, and certainly Pluto in Capricorn has spoken to that since 2008. So it's not always about looking at things in isolation either, because nothing works in isolation, everything is interconnected. So, we've got Pluto still in an earth sign, Uranus in an earth sign. So there's big transformations and crises and shocks and sudden things occurring on the earth, and sort of globally, that's affecting humanity at large in a number of different ways. And a lot of it, of course, is presented as sheer doom and gloom through the media, because that holds people in a feared position, a disempowered position. But that, again, that also comes back to our own choice of what narrative we want to hook into, because you can hook into the narrative that Uranus in Taurus conjunct the North Node in Taurus and Urania there, that you are integrating a very solid, stable experience of intelligence through the body, and through that finding your own authenticity and how you might plan, plan or plant the seeds, or create the foundations for, because Taurus is about building. If you're building a house, it's pretty much Taurus. The scaffolding and the structure to that building, that's all defined by Taurus. So we can apply that same process, I suppose, to anything we're trying to create. It's Taurus Scorpio, but it is Taurus when we are trying to build something. So we are building a new future as well. As a collective family, we are also each responsible for contributing to building a new future. The gods and the goddesses and energy and divine source creation have their own, how can I put it? Their own intentions. And I think our responsibility is to integrate and align with those intentions from the point of view of what our soul needs to align with and integrate with any of these energies. So expect the unexpected with North Node Uranus, and collectively it's going to bring some shock waves in for sure. But again, it's just up to you how you work with this energy, how you consciously choose to ground it, really, because Taurus is the body, as I keep saying, so it's really about harnessing and grounding this energy it's kind of hard to harness and ground, because Uranus is very erratic, and it's electricity, and it's the electricity in the body. So I guess perhaps the grounding might even be speaking more to the point that I made earlier about just how decentered we've become through all the distractions. And so a reminder with North Node Uranus in terms of projecting a future that could be speaking to a healthier way of living on the earth, Taurus, Gaia, by integrating the intelligence of Uranus, Urania, the goddess of astrology and astronomy, reminding us, taking us back to truth, Uranus, that astronomy and astrology are one and the same, that as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. So Uranus is the awakener. It's the energy that wakes us up. So how is it going to wake us up? Through the senses and the body. And so it is an opportunity to cultivate and integrate and create some sort of grounding with this energy. It will speak through the antennas of Uranus. So it will come through those electrical circuits and be downloaded through our brain, consciousness, etc. But then we bring it down into the body, create the grounding to generate and to create a reality, earth plane, Taurus, a field that has new inventions, new ideas, Uranus, that is very helpful for us to salvage actually the earth plane, because humanity has fucked it up. Sorry for the language, but that's what's happened. We've got all these things going on that presented as natural disasters or whatever. I mean, look at the weather. What's going on with the weather at the moment? Why is it freaking 45 degrees in China? It's fucking unheard of. UK London had this massive heat wave as well. I've lived in London. London doesn't get to that temperature. What the hell's going on? We've got to ask some questions here, There's stuff going on that's just not normal, right? Uranus in Taurus. Uranus is anything but normal, and Taurus is the earth. So lots of weird things going on. And there's different ways you can look at it, a different lens to look through, right? But in any case, the more aware we are, the more aligned we are, the more we work on ourselves. Because the working on ourselves, the flame, the inner flame, Vesta, which is the investment of how we are integrating with the soul's desires. You could say that about Vesta as well. She's a very deep mystical goddess, and she points us to the hearth, the flame in the heart, right? And we have to tend to that. It's a flame that's always there with Vesta, but if we don't tend to it, it just fades out. It never goes away, but it fades. And the more it fades, the more disconnected we are from that heart center place that would speak to being aligned and being able to integrate with the heart and with authenticity, which is interesting because those two words correspond to Leo, Aquarius. So, Uranus rules Aquarius. We're about to go into Leo season. So we can think about those sorts of themes as well. Let me just see if I had anything else here. I guess the thing that we perhaps also need to consider is that Saturn is still within range of squaring Uranus, So there is still this incredible sense of wanting to break free and Saturn kind of keeping a tight hold through this 3D reality, right? And so there's this, for us personally, it would be felt in different ways for each of us, but for those of us that are more Uranian, let's say, that there might be a strong sense of tension inwardly, because Uranus square Saturn is a very extreme tension inwardly that we can feel, and that's clearly being projected on the earth plane as well. And Uranus, of course, is waking up, right? It's taking us through the complete unknown, the complete unexpected, and it's also the planet that speaks to rebellious behavior. And of course, it's the planet that speaks to technology and technological advancements. And I think there's just going to be a surge of things that come through with Uranus North Node Taurus conjunction down the track. There's a lot we're going to see. But the rebellion side's an interesting component, because when you bring Mars into the picture, Mars Uranus alone is a powerful signature for accidents, actually. It's a really volatile energy, and when it's projected, it can really create some pretty compromising situations. Now, in some cases that might be an okay thing, but in other cases it might be quite dangerous. So from a personal perspective, if this Mars-Uranus aspect, depending on where it is in your chart, of course, but if it was in the first house or in the third house, I'd be pretty mindful of just, activities for those days. A third house would be like driving your car, and I've seen Mars-Uranus energies for people who've had, significant car accidents. Actually, I've seen that several times. It's not an uncommon thing at all. So yeah, just remember that Mars is only going to be there. Look, let's just have a look, for just a couple of days, and it's kind of fortunate actually, because that energy can be pretty difficult to deal with. So where are we? Where am I going? Hang on a minute. I'm trying to get to here. 31st of July is the conjunction between Uranus North Node, and then Mars gets there more or less the following day, but it's within range, okay, on this day. And Goddess Urania is just sitting here as well. There's no glyph for her, so I can't put her in. So just imagine that she's here with these three bodies. So Mars is there from, you could say, 30th of July quite easily. And its impact is going to be very strong for a few days, okay, which is typically the case with these faster moving planets. So in order to really grasp what does that mean for me, first of all, I would be looking at where is this transit occurring in your chart, number one. What is the relationship between Mars and Uranus in your own chart, right? What's the aspect between them? How do you relate to those energies anyway? Because any transit you are looking at in your chart at the moment, for instance, or at any time for that matter, you need to go back and look at what are those planets doing in my own chart? Do they have an aspect? If they do, what is the aspect? How do I resonate with those energies? How do I identify them in my own life? Because there's a million transits, so to speak, going on at any given moment. So is every single transit going to be, absolutely activated and, noticeable in your life? No, because we'd I think we'd go a little bit crazy. So not every transit is extremely important for all of us. I think the North Node Uranus is, especially from a collective perspective and even from our own personal perspective to an extent, and more for others perhaps. But Mars is a very quick transit, right? It's a very, reasonably fast moving body. And so it's only going to be there for a few days. Nevertheless, it still comes into this field of the energy of Uranus North Node Urania relative to a 15-year cycle. So we can say that Mars is present in the chart of the North Node Uranus conjunction. That's a little bit scary in one way, because Mars, in the hands of unconscious personalities, is often used through violence and anger, okay, and conflict in ways that are harmful, right, and negative. That's why that concerns me a little bit. But in the hands of people who are more aware, it is an energy that can be used to bring the will, because Mars is your will, how you direct your will and your energy is Mars. And so with Uranus, there can be incredible actions that can be decided upon, acted upon, things that you can create through that energy. Remember, Mars energizes whatever it touches. And personally, even though Mars is in its detriment in the sign of Taurus, because it is, according to traditional astrology, essential dignities and debilities, so each planet will have either a dignified or a not so dignified position in a particular sign. In some cases, it's neutral. So it varies on which planet we're looking at. But in the case of Mars in Taurus, it's said to be in its detriment. I don't think Mars in Taurus is a real problem, even though it's in its detriment. It's a lot more passive there than what it is when it's in Aries, which is its home sign. People assume because a planet is in its home sign that, you're going to get the best out of it. And it's not necessarily the case. Mars in Aries is very fucking dangerous. Very dangerous in the wrong hands. Mars in Taurus wouldn't be dangerous in that same way unless it gets its Scorpio shadow activated, and then it's extremely dangerous. So it depends. But overall, Mars in Taurus has the stamina to build solid foundations. So that energy can be even looked at through that lens. It's the energy injected into the foundations of what you are trying to build for your life moving forward. And Mars just injects the desire, the energy, the willpower. That's not such a bad thing, right? Not at all. So it just depends how we integrate these energies. But as a collective theme, if you like, it could also be, some pretty radical, crazy shit that gets created, with Mars type of things as well, which is machinery. Mars rules machinery and Uranus rules technology. So we could possibly even say that there's some pretty unusual futuristic type stuff yet to come from that machinery technological type of level. So there's so many layers to all the archetypes for that matter. Okay, so and just one final thing, which is super important. The ruler to these energies is, of course, Venus. And Venus is an energy that exudes a frequency that ultimately is about love, connection, peace, harmony, balance, cooperation. Venus wants to cooperate. Mars wants to fight and Venus wants to cooperate. So it's an interesting kind of energy here, you know, but the Earth adds a real sobering, solid, foundational, building, slower kind of pace as well with Taurus, because Taurus is the sign of the zodiac where it will take its time. You cannot force or push a Taurian into anything. Look at the cows on the paddock. Can you get it to move by trying to push it? No, not at all. So Venus, anyway, Venus being the ruler of Taurus and these energies here, I think is very prominent as well, because in this 15-year cycle that the Uranus North Node specifically speaks to is that time frame is when the VSP, the Venus star point, transitions from Scorpio into Libra. And again, that can't be a coincidence. So Venus is moving out of a sign that she's been in for about 100 years, Scorpio. This is relative to the pentagram, the Venus star points, the 5 Venus star points on the clock. She's working like a clock in the background. This is another clock. We have the esoteric astrology, that's another clock. We have the fixed stars, that's another clock, if you like. So cosmic clocks, just layers upon layers, and all operating, all significant, all speaking to different levels and layers. And so the Venus star points are one particular cosmic clock relative to the Sun, Venus, Earth cycle. So Venus coming out of Scorpio after 100 years and moving out of a sign where she's in her detriment or full detriment, and moving into her own sign, Libra, and therefore being the ruler of this 15-year cycle, Uranus-Mars, also gives us a sense of hope as well, right? Because it's Venus, the fabric and glue that holds everything together in harmony is Venus through love. And I'm not talking about romantic love. I'm talking about the absolute essence of pure love. It's unconditional. Love has no conditions. It cannot. So I think that's very encouraging for us as well relative to the future. And also Mars and Venus are sextile each other in this chart, right, with this configuration of Uranus North Node. And that's also very encouraging too, that these two bodies who were the most famous lovers in myth, Mars and Venus, Ares and Aphrodite, being in sextile to one another also brings in more harmony relative to the, you could say, divine feminine, divine masculine. You could say the genders. You can say the feminine and masculine within, you know, the healthier integration of that for all of us. There's assistance here. A sextile produces opportunity and help and support. So that's also very, very encouraging. And also, if Taurus is a sign of money, which it is, and Venus is also a planet that corresponds to the world of money, the material world, certainly what we value and things of that nature. So, you know, that's very encouraging that she's there in a sextile, not only to Mars, but to Uranus North Node and Urania as well. One thing that I'd like to also point out just before I go, Venus in Cancer and Mars, Uranus, North Node, and Urania in Taurus. So the earth and water signs, one thing to remember about them that I don't think is spoken about nearly enough is that earth and water take us in and down. And because they do that, those elements then speak very strongly to how we participate in creation, co-creation, in creating. So it comes down to the initiation that we will instigate with these energies. It's our own doing, in other words. The contrast to that would be air and fire, which pushes us out. It takes us up and out, air and fire. And air and fire takes us more into the field of the opportunities that would come more through the actions and the people that we connect with. You know, that the more we are sort of engaged and connected with perhaps communities, tribes, particular individual, etc., opportunities come in that way. But with water and earth, the opportunities come very much from an inner place. So we are giving birth to that, and then we are co-creating. So just remember that with this Uranus North Node energy as well, because it's in earth, right? That's what earth does. It takes us in and down, water, earth, in, down. And therefore what we create from that level of awareness or understanding or seeing or desire, Mars, desire. So yeah, I think that probably covers most of what I wanted to say. There's bigger picture levels here, you know, with this Uranus North Node, and actually, well, there's a few astrologers that have done a couple of podcasts, you know, so you can sort of have a look-see around. But there's a few, I think there's one group of people that definitely did speak about a timeline, looking at the timeline of what it's meant historically when Uranus and North Node come together. And that was a really interesting podcast, actually. It was with the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, as it's called, and Gary C. Payton, Maurice were part of that program, that podcast. And as a matter of fact, now that I mentioned Gary C. Payton, so Gary C. Payton is the author of this book here. And let me just see, was there anything else I wanted to say there before I get the chart off the screen? No, that'll do. I've shown this book before, Gary C. Payton, Hermetica Triptica, the Mercury Elemental Year. So I've invited him to come onto my YouTube channel and give him the opportunity to share with us, well, some things out of his book to begin with, which I've more or less skimmed through, but I need to take a deeper dive into it. And so I'll do that, and then I'll bring him on for you guys to have the opportunity to hear him speak. He's a great astrologer, and he communicates really well, and he's very funny too, and I really like humor. Humor is medicine. And so we are going to get together and talk about his book and Mercury, and specifically as well, Mercury, which is, he's going to go, she, they, going to go retrograde September, 9th and 10th of September in the sign of Libra. And what he brought to my attention, which I didn't realize, is that is the last retrograde cycle in air signs for Mercury for the next 7 years. That blew me away. I'm very curious about that, and I'm very curious in sitting with Gary and having a conversation about this. So we'll bring that to you guys soon. So yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that's something that's coming up soon. And yeah, leave it there, and hope you are all well, and look forward to reading your comments and thoughts below this video relative to, you know, what your thoughts and reflections are about, either about what I've shared or what insights you may have yourself about this Uranus North Node. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So I'll see you guys very, very soon. Sending you all much love and many blessings. Bye for now.